Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to cross the Øresund to Copenhagen in Denmark once again, which, as I've told you many a time, is one of the best craft beer cities in the world in my opinion. I think it's probably the best city in Europe at the moment for kind of modern American style craft beer. It's pretty hard to beat. But for this review we're going to return to a brewery who I haven't had anything from in over a year. I think the last review that I did involving this brewery was a collaboration with Wylam from Newcastle in England, and it's my first dedicated review that I've done for them in over 2 years actually, but they've been a lot more prolific recently than they have been in previous years, so very curious to see how their beers have changed, and I hope you guys enjoy my take on this one. So for this review we are going to return to Flying Couch Brewery, and we're having a taste of the Syreregn, which the name translates into English as Acid Rain. So this is an IPA coming in at 6.5% ABV, and I'm wondering from the name of this beer whether it's going to be a sour IPA, and I've not reviewed one of those on the channel for you for quite a little while, so I'm really curious to see how this turns out. I bought this beer at Kiosk over in Copenhagen. The name caught my eye, the artwork caught my eye, and I just kind of thought, you know, I've not reviewed anything from these guys in a while, so why the hell not? So as I say, looking forward to this one, and I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Flying Couch before. No doubt I will add some more in the near future. I definitely won't be leaving it another 2 years to review one of their beers. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Danish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Flying Couch Brewery then, on to my brewery notes quickly. So Flying Couch Brewery was originally founded back in 2012 by Peter Zone, and he was joined a little bit later by Jannik Salhold, who used to work for Mikkeller. So Peter was the head brewer at Nørrebro Bryghus, and then also the managing director and head brewer at Halsnæs Brewery, which is a little bit up to it's in the northwestern corner of Sjælland, and you will see a little brewery visit video there. I'm not sure exactly when that will be published, but you will see that at some point soon. But apparently he also brewed sometimes at Herslev Bryghus as well, which is out by Roskilde, kind of in the centre of Sjælland. Sjælland, incidentally, is that eastern island of Denmark, if you don't know. But Flying Couch started really as a playground project where Peter could have total control of the brewing and brew what he likes, and the brewery is apparently named after the good ideas that Peter has had while being drinking beer on the couch. But today the company consists of 5 people after Kasper Gerdes, Kim Christensen and Michael Aram joined Peter and Jannik. They also have their own brewery, which is located between Bispebjerg and Nørrebro in Copenhagen, if I've pronounced the first place correct, Bispebjerg. I've not been to that part yet, but they've been very prolific over the last couple of years. This brewery just started out, you know, brewing a couple of beers every so often, to be honest, and I did try one of those a good number of years ago. I forget what the name of it was, but it wasn't too long after I moved to Sweden the first time a couple of years back. But as of August 2019, they've now produced over 200 different varieties of beer, and there's a whole variety of different styles in there. They seem to be focusing a lot on sour beers recently. They've been doing a lot of Berliner Weisses and things like that. So if you're into your sour beers and your IPAs and stuff, this is a brewery that you definitely want to keep an eye on, in fact, and they've got a very solid brewer in there from what I gather too. But yeah, that's all I'm really able to tell you about the brewery for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more, of course, you can check out the brewery website, and you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that as well. But yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer then, because I'm very curious just to see how this one turns out. So this is one of these labels that could definitely hypnotise you. You know, you put that on one of these old cathode ray tube TVs and it would go absolutely stark raving bananas. But yeah, you know, it looks pretty cool actually, and as I say, this was just the one that caught my eye. So it tells you on the side here, West Coast inspired IPA. And I think that was one of the other reasons I picked it as well, was because I've been missing my West Coast IPAs. But with the name Acid Rain, is it going to be a slightly sour West Coasty type IPA? But it says it has wheat malt in it, so that's a little bit of a sign of a kind of New Englandy type thing. Or, you know, the Florida IPAs use a little bit of a sour yeast and you know, a kind of bready malt base as well. But it says here that it's hot with Citra. It comes in at 6.5%, and this is a little 330ml can. It says on the side here, product of Denmark. I think it would be cool if they put a little Danish flag on this beer, kind of like Beerbibliotek in Gothenburg do with the Swedish flag. But yeah, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting then. I'm curious, as I say, to try my first beer from this brewery in quite a little while. So let's stick it out and into the glass. Ooh, that looks pretty good actually. So in terms of appearance, it kind of does look a little bit more like a Florida IPA or something like that. I'm used to my my New England IPAs being kind of hazy like this, but I'm used to my West Coast IPAs being a little bit more kind of ambery and slightly clearer than this, to be honest with you. But you know, appearance isn't the most important thing, it's all about the flavours of the beer. So as you can see with this, if I hold it up to the light, it is quite a hazy, bright yellow colour, this one. There's a solid finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head on this one. It's a bit creamy around the edges in fairness, but perfect white in the middle, so yeah. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But you know, overall, looks pretty nice, not overly surprising for an IPA. It does say West Coast inspired IPA rather than a West Coast IPA, but that's kind of an interesting one. You do smell a little bit of the malty qualities coming out of this beer as you open it up. If I put my fingers behind the glass, there you can see the degree of haze that this beer has. But yeah, let's take a look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this one then. You're right, okay. So, straight away with this beer, to me, the aroma of this one really, it does remind me a little bit of the Florida IPAs. You can pick up the nice mango notes from the Citra. It's got a little bit of that kind of lychee gooseberry sort of thing that you can get, the kind of complexities that you'd normally expect of the Citra hop. In terms of the green side of the hops, for me it's definitely leaning towards the grassy side of things rather than anything else. There's not too much of a floral character in here for me. This is definitely leaning more towards a sort of grassy side when it comes to the green side of the Citra hops. So yeah, it's got a little bit of that fruity juiciness in there, which is kind of what you'd expect. So yeah, on that side of things, on the hoppy side of things, pretty much kind of what I would have expected from a Citra hop beer. I do wonder if there's another hop in there being used as a bittering hop. It does almost have a little bit of a slightly noble hoppy quality to it. So, you know, maybe is there a bit of a Czech Sats or a Hallertau Nang, or maybe even like a Peril or Hercules or something like that. Perhaps one of the Slovenian hops. That's one of the things that's come into my mind straight away with the aroma in this beer. There's just that distinct European, slightly noble, grassy quality to this one as well. And normally you would expect Citra to be a little bit more floral than it is right now. But yeah, in terms of the malty side of the beer then, yeah, nice little bit of a wheaty quality in there. You can definitely smell a bit of that wheat malt coming out. There's a little touch of a biscuity quality in there as well. There's definitely a little touch of sweetness in there. I'm reluctant to say it's brown sugar because it's not quite oily and sweet enough to be that in my opinion. But yeah, there is definitely a little bit of a kind of sweetness in there. It's almost like a little bit honeyish or something like that. So it's quite interesting. There is something in my head that wants to say there is just a little touch of a kind of acidic quality to this one. Maybe they've used a little bit of acidulated malt, and I know that that's what Magic Rock in England, they used to absolutely love doing that with their beers, and it was a very interesting thing to add to the malt base actually. Just changed the mouthfeel of the beer. But to me, yeah, it smells more. This beer, it's interesting. It's got a few elements. It's got more along the pungency of a New England IPA for me, this one. This beer to me does come across as being slightly Florida IPA-ish with that little touch of sour quality in the bready base, but it's got a little bit of the kind of New England smoothness and breadiness as well. So West Coast inspired IPA, it's an interesting line to put on the can of this beer going by the aroma. But let's have a taste of it then and just see how we get on. So this one is the Syreregn. if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Danish is ridiculously hard to pronounce, a bit easier with the Swedish, but basically the Acid Rain, a West Coast inspired IPA at 6.5% from Flying Couch Brewery in Copenhagen in Denmark. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål. Now, that's pretty good, I have to say. To me, I don't, just going by this beer, I don't think this is the most bold beer that you're going to come across from Flying Couch. My first impression of this beer, if I blind tasted this, I would think that it's a low alcohol session IPA. But at that, if you consider it as that, I think it's pretty solid. It is a pretty solid beer, this one. Yeah, I like how this one goes together. I mean, it's a very easy drinker. Sort of sessional style IPA. Normally though, when you say something is a session IPA, you're going to think that that's around 5%, you know, 5.5%, 6 to between 5 and 6% probably for an IPA, because you do expect an IPA to be a bit higher in alcohol than that, unless it's one of these English real ale things, which has to be between 4% and some of that rubbish. But anyway, to me, this kind of strikes me as being a nice sort of sessionable, easygoing IPA, and in that category, if you consider it in that category, it is pretty solid. I was expecting, you know, with a name like Acid Rain, you do expect it to be a little bit more kind of, you expect it to have a little bit of that tartness or something like that, maybe a little bit of Brettanomyces or Lactobacillus, or even a little bit of acidulated malt. I'd be curious to know the inspiration of the name of this one, because it's it's just a little bit unusual, I think. But as a beer itself, if we discount that, I would complain about the branding a little bit with this, and again, it would be the kind of West Coast inspired IPA would be another thing. If we just consider it as a beer, I like it. I wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. But yeah, I certainly like how this one kind of comes together. So let's break down the flavour a little bit then. Middle of your palate is, you can feel that nice bready, wheaty quality. That just blankets the middle of your tongue. The further you go into the aftertaste, it does kind of dry out a little bit. There's a little touch of a biscuity sweetness in the middle of your tongue that comes out a little bit more further in the aftertaste, but it's kind of always present, to be honest with you. It's always kind of just sitting there, but the malt base in this one is fairly kind of straight up. I mean, the malt base in this beer kind of strikes me as being a little bit like a pale ale, basically. It's one of these pale ales where the focus is more on the hop, and you know, there was a period where a lot of breweries were putting pale ales out there, just putting pale malt in the base and then throwing hops in it and blasting you with the bitterness. This beer, it kind of has a little bit of that feel to it in terms of the malt base, but it does have a little bit of sweetness that comes out later on. It's got a very similar feel to it, like I said, with the malt bases of some of these session IPAs, but it's not quite got the sort of sweetness and caramelly malts and stuff like that I would expect from a West Coast IPA. When it says West Coast inspired IPA, I have to admit, I do struggle to see that a little bit with this one. It's more like a pale ale, this beer, to me, in terms of its flavour, than an IPA. But of course, those beer styles are related through their their hop to malts ratio. You've got the pale ale at the bottom, the IPA, the double IPA, the barley wine, basically. But it's solid enough. As I said, I've repeated that a few times in this video. So on the hoppy side of things, then there's a little bit of earthiness in the back corners of the palate there. I do suspect that it's not just Citra that's in here. I think there might be something else. But as you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, as you reach the front corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of a floral aromaticity out of this one. Round the very front curve of the palate, it is just a little bit lighter and grassy. And in fairness, there is a little touch of acidity to this one. You can feel a little bit of that dryness around the kind of front edge of your tongue. If they had added a little bit of an acidulated malt to this one, it would give you that little bit of bite in the middle of your palate. That could be a nice addition to this beer, particularly considering the name that it has. But behind the front curve of the palate, of course, that's where you get that little oily bubble where those nice, juicy, fruity esters push their way out of the beer. And the other thing I would say about this beer, in fairness, is that you do get a little bit of a slightly sharper acidic bite when you take the beer in. You do have that little bit to it there. But at the back of that fruity bubble that I was talking about, you can pick out a little bit of that slightly darker tropical fruit there. It's not quite strong enough to be grapefruit, maybe a little touch passion fruity. Coming further forward, you're going to get a little bit of the mango there, and the mango kind of pushes all the way to the front of the tongue almost, but just behind the very tip of your tongue, that's where you're going to get some of these complexities that you get out of the Citra in there. And Citra can give you some really interesting complexities depending on what malts you're using and what other hops you have in there. For me, on the tip of the tongue, this beer just has a little touch of a kind of limey quality to it. There is a little bit of a slightly kind of gooseberry-ish quality in there as well, but mainly to me it's mangoes and a little bit of lime that's coming out of this one, and a little bit of that darker passion fruity note, if you like, that's sitting at the back of the palate too. But I mean, overall, if you consider this beer as a session IPA, I think it's pretty solid. Like I said, the thing that I was a bit surprised about this, they've called it Acid Rain, and it's not a slightly sour IPA. I think they've maybe missed a little bit of an opportunity there with their branding a little bit. But it's a nice beer. It is a good, solid, sessionable, easy drinking IPA, this. So if that's kind of what you're in for, then I think you will enjoy this. And in fairness, it does have a little bit of a sharp bite to it in the beginning. So in terms of the mouthfeel then, I would say that this beer is fairly kind of mid-bodied. It's at the bottom end of mid-bodied rather than anything else. Carbonation's very smooth. It does have a little bit of a crispness to it as well, in fairness. The mouthfeel overall leans towards the wet side of things for me. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think you're lucky to get about 25, maybe 30 IBUs at a push out of this beer. Again, if it's a West Coast IPA, you do expect at least 50 or something like that out of the beer. So a little bit of hop bitterness in there, like I said, 30 IBUs. Malt base is mainly quite smooth, a little bit of bite there in the beginning, but it's got a little touch of sweetness later on, and you've got some nice juicy fruity qualities in there as well. So overall, it's a nice beer, this one. If you consider it as a session IPA, I think it's pretty solid in that regard. But yeah, if it's called Acid Rain, I would want it to just be a little bit acidic and sour. That's one of the things I was thinking about this. But like I said, I did pick it up on the basis that it was a West Coast IPA, and it is a little bit more just kind of like a New England Pale or something like that, but it's not quite as creamy as you'd get from a New England Pale. It's maybe, if you took this beer back to like 2016, 2017, it kind of reminds me of one of those, one of these beers where it's, you know, it's maybe 2015 would be a good time as well. It's one of these beers that has like basically a flat malt base to it, a flat pale malt base, and then it's got a bit of hop kind of thrown on top of it. But it's a nice sessionable IPA, this one, and I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again if it was marketed as a session IPA. But yeah, it's an interesting beer, this one. I don't think this is the boldest one you're going to find from Flying Couch, to be quite honest, so I'm going to look for something the next time I go to Kiosk from these guys that's a little bit bolder, or maybe try one of their sours or something like that, and see how that turns out. But a nice enough beer, and pardon me, like I said, if I wanted a nice sessionable IPA, this would be a pretty solid choice actually. So yeah, geez, I'm getting a little bit of gas from it, but let's leave it at that. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Flying Couch as well. I will definitely review another beer from these guys in the fairly near future, but check out some of their beers if you get the chance. They are, you know, some of their older beers are really good, and I do want to try something that's a little bit bigger in alcohol and things like that over the next little while. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. This one is the Syreregn, the Acid Rain, an IPA coming in at 6.5% from Flying Couch Brewery in Copenhagen, Denmark. Until the next time, Slange just now, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Slange, skål, cheers. Make sure you try this beer, and make sure you try some of the other beers, and check out Kiosk in Copenhagen as well. Slange, skål.